Every mythology in the world has a creation story. The Norse had one of those. But they also had something very few other mythologies dared to build: an ending. A complete, detailed, inevitable ending to everything. The gods will die. The world will burn. The sky will fall into the sea. And the Norse knew this, believed this, and worshipped their gods anyway. Not because they thought the gods would win, but because they believed fighting to the end, even a losing end, was the only thing worth doing. This is Ragnarok, the doom of the gods, and it is one of the most extraordinary pieces of mythological storytelling ever conceived. Welcome back to Mythos Uncovered, and today we are covering the event that everything in Norse mythology has been building toward. If you have been following along through our Thor and Loki episodes, you already know some of the pieces. Today we put them all together. Let's get into it. The word Ragnarok comes from Old Norse and carries two possible meanings depending on how it is written. Ragnarok means the fate or doom of the gods. Ragnarokr, a slightly different spelling, means the twilight of the gods, the darkening, the fading of the light. Both meanings are accurate. Both are intentional. The Norse were precise about their endings. The signs of Ragnarok were known in advance. The ancient texts, particularly the Voluspa, the prophecy of the seers, lay them out in sequence with the clarity of a countdown. First would come Fimbulwinter. 3 consecutive winters with no summer between them. Snow driving in from every direction, the sun giving no warmth, the world freezing from the outside in. Crops would fail, livestock would die. And then, worse than the cold, the bonds of human society would snap. Brothers would kill brothers, fathers would betray sons. The ancient texts describe it without flinching. The age of axes, the age of swords, the age of wolves. All the rules that hold people together would dissolve, and only violence would remain. During Fimbulwinter, the wolf Skoll, who had spent all of time chasing the sun across the sky, would finally catch it and swallow it whole. His brother Hati would catch the moon. The stars would vanish from the sky. The world would go dark. Then the earth would shake. Every chain and every lock in the 9 realms would break open. And 2 figures would be freed who had been bound for a very long time. The first was Fenrir, the monstrous wolf, son of Loki, so enormous that when he opened his jaws, the upper jaw touched the sky and the lower jaw scraped the earth. Fenrir had been bound by the gods in the early age of the world using a magical ribbon called Gleipnir, forged by the dwarves from impossible things: the sound of a cat's footstep, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, the spittle of a bird. Things that do not exist, made into a binding that could not be broken, until Ragnarok, when it could. The second was Loki himself, bound in his cave since the death of Balder, venom dripping on his face for an age of the world. The earthquakes that had been explained as his writhing in pain would become the earthquakes of his liberation. And Loki, freed, would sail to the final battle on a ship called Naglfar, a vessel made entirely from the fingernails and toenails of the dead, and so large it could carry an army of giants across the sea to Asgard. At the same time, the Midgard serpent Jormungandr, the vast serpent that encircled the world and bit its own tail, would release its tail and rise from the ocean. Its movement through the water would create waves so enormous they would flood the land, and as it crawled ashore, the poison it breathed would corrupt the sky itself. And from the south, Surt, the fire giant who had stood at the border of Muspelheim, the realm of fire, since before the world was made, would march north with a flaming sword that burned brighter than the sun. Everything it touched would become ash. The god Heimdall, watchman of the gods, standing at his post at the edge of Asgard, would see all of this coming and blow the Jallarhorn, the horn whose sound could be heard across all 9 realms. And the gods would arm themselves and ride out to meet their fate. Hey, quick pause right here. If you're enjoying this, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It genuinely helps this channel grow and means more myths, more stories, more uncovering. Alright, back to Ragnarok. The battles of Ragnarok were foretold in complete detail, and the Norse did not soften them. Odin, the Allfather, the king of the gods, would face Fenrir. The wolf would swallow him whole. Odin's son Vidar, in vengeance, would tear the wolf's jaws apart or drive a sword through its palate. But Odin would be gone. The wisest god, the one who had sacrificed his eye for knowledge and hung himself from Yggdrasil for 9 days to learn the runes, the one who had spent an eternity preparing for this moment, swallowed. Thor, as we covered in his episode, would face Jormungandr. He would kill the serpent, and then he would take 9 steps and fall. Drowned in the venom, the dying serpent released into the air. The protector of mankind, dead on the field. Freyr, the god of fertility and sunshine, would face Surt the fire giant. And he would lose, because at an earlier point in the mythology he had given away his magical sword, the sword that fought on its own, to win the love of a giantess. Without it, he would fight with an antler and fall to Surt's blade. Tyr, the god of law and justice, would fight and kill the great hound Garm, but die of the wounds the hound inflicted. Heimdall and Loki would kill each other. The two who had been watching each other across the centuries, circling, waiting. They would meet at last, and neither would walk away. And then Surt would raise his flaming sword over what remained and sweep it across the world, and the earth would burn and sink beneath the sea. This is where many mythological traditions would end. Darkness, silence, nothing. But the Voluspa does not end there. After the fire and the flood, the earth rises again from the sea. Green and new, with waterfalls running clean and eagles circling above fresh mountains. The fields, unsown, will grow grain on their own, and some of the gods will survive or return. Balder, who died before Ragnarok, will come back from the realm of the dead. Odin's sons, Vidar and Vali, will remain. Thor's sons Modi and Magni will inherit Mjolnir. A small number of humans, a man and a woman who sheltered inside the world tree Yggdrasil while the world burned, will emerge and repopulate the earth. The world will be reborn. The cycle will begin again. The Norse vision of the end of the world was not a punishment. It was not the consequence of human sin or divine anger. It was simply the natural completion of a cycle, as inevitable as winter, as necessary as death before new growth. The gods knew it was coming. They could not stop it. They fought anyway, because that was what it meant to be the kind of being they were. Courage in the face of certain defeat was not a flaw in their character. It was the whole point of their character. This idea, that the Norse gods were noble precisely because they fought knowing they would lose, is considered one of the most distinctive and philosophically striking elements of Norse mythology. It is sometimes called the ethic of heroic defiance, and it runs through virtually every corner of Norse tradition, from the smallest saga to the grandest myth. A warrior who wins is lucky. A warrior who fights well knowing the end is already written. That warrior is something else entirely. Other traditions have gods who are eternal, invincible, guaranteed to triumph in the end. The Norse gods had a date with destruction written into the fabric of the universe, and they spent their entire existence preparing for it anyway. There is something in that which feels very true to human experience. We all have an ending coming. What we do before it is everything. So, Ragnarok. Not just an apocalypse, but a complete vision of what it means to live well in the face of inevitable loss. The end of everything that was, and the seed of everything that comes after. The myths always have more in them than we first think. That's why we're here. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Mythos Uncovered. It genuinely means a lot that you spend your time here with me diving into these ancient stories. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now and hit the bell so you never miss a new myth. And drop a comment below telling me what myth or legend you want me to cover next. Every single comment gets read, and the next video might just come from you. I'll see you in the next one.